Thank you, Frederick. Our next presenter is Spencer Williams. I have to do for the computer, but Spencer is the president and CEO of Retirement Clearinghouse. Prior to his current position, he served in numerous roles with MassMutual Financial Group. He also served on active duty with the U.S. Navy for 5 years, and among other things, participated in the UN peacekeeping operations in Beirut, Lebanon. So, Spencer?
While we're getting set up, if anybody'd like me to tell you war stories about the USS New Jersey off the coast of Lebanon in 83, 84, and President Reagan, I'd be happy to do that for you. I'm going to have to disconnect here for just a second. I hope I'm not going to mess somebody else up, but I need this connection. All right, so I just unplugged. One more. All right, great. You'll all be treated to my desktop in just a second. This is a proprietary and confidential information. Appreciate if you don't disseminate it, particularly to my children. You might see a picture of a grandson. I think I hid it, but yesterday my oldest son had his second son, and his wife is doing well. Thank you very much. So it was a great day. I love it when the technology works. Can you all see that pretty well? I think it takes about 20. Well, good afternoon, everyone. And Harry, thanks for having us. EBRI, thanks for having us. No sound. Okay, we're good. As Harry said, I'm with Retirement Clearinghouse. We're a practitioner in the art and the science of helping people who are changing jobs keep their retirement savings in the system. We count among our clients about 20,000 employer-sponsored plans, and we've been at this for about 15 years. I'm joined today by a colleague, Dr. Ricky Ingalls. Ricky's here because he actually built what you're all going to see today. Okay, and we thought it was pretty important that we describe perhaps the science. But let me back up a half a sec, because I use the term art and science. You know, America's workforce is increasingly mobile. We know that. We've heard that referenced a couple times today. We'll just put a big umbrella on it, and then we're going to come down, fast into the zone that we'd like to talk to you about today. The big umbrella is that there's about 12.5 million people every year, that's this year, next year, and the year after, who have some type of a defined contribution plan that is going to change jobs this year. Okay? And as the headline says, we know that the outcomes from those job changes are varied. What we'd like to talk to you about today is how to reduce leakage. There's plenty of research out there. We've been responsible for some of it. Many other contributors, EBRI and others, that are directly linking leakage to what we term the lack of portability. Okay? Meaning today it's a DIY world. So those of you who have successfully built a tree fort in your backyard for your kids, or poured cement for your patio without a hiccup, well, you are one of the very few people who are successful at DIY, and you could get your retirement savings account from your former employer plan to your new employer plan. Unfortunately, you represent something like 3% of the population, and that number gets even more acute in terms of the issue when we start to segment our workforce and look at very small balances. So what we're going to do today is we're going to introduce, we started this, the art piece of this is, a few years back, our largest employer helped us discover that if we put a fairly simple engagement model in place with both their incoming and their departing employees, that we could reduce leakage by 50%. Well, thus started a journey of discovery that some days I regret taking. because we've taken on the burden of, if you will, educating, identifying the marketplace, and at the same time, identifying solutions to this leakage. What we're going to see today is more science. In our quest for good information, it's taken us all over the country, frankly, to find good information, to try to piece together a puzzle that is very difficult to put together. What is actually happening, to whom, and when folks change jobs? We have big numbers on leakage. You know, we've got kind of big swaths of the population. We're able to break it down by segments, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But we said basically a question that we got along the way drove us to this particular media, and today is actually about using a different media to educate and inform you all. And hopefully you'll walk away with just a little better insight as to what's going on in America's mobile workforce and why leakage, particularly among small accounts, is such an acute and solvable problem. Also hope to let you know that there is a clear path forward to beginning to solve the problem where it is most dire, again, in these very small accounts. We've been hard on the public policy trail for a while because being on the right side of leakage is mom and apple pie. How could you be on the other side of that one, right? Along the way, several of the large financial institutions that we're working with said, well, thank you very much. Would you please quit beating us over the head with the public policy arguments, guys? Could you please tell us what's going to happen if we turn on or enable a system that improves portability and, frankly, just helps people move their account from employer to employer? We stepped back, thought about it for a little while, and said, maybe we could build a simulation. And that's where Dr. Ricky Ingalls came in, because I can't build a simulation. All right. So the first thing that we'd like to do is tell you a little bit about this simulation. And I'm going to let Ricky do that as the guy who built it. And he's also my safety net, by the way, if something breaks here. We're in great shape with Ricky here. So a little bit about the simulation, Ricky. And please tell everybody a little bit about your experience and expertise in this field. Yeah.
Yes, I'm Ricky Ingalls. My background is I was in industry for 16 years, and now I've been in academics and in consulting for the last 16 years. I'm currently at Texas State University, where I'm the chair of the Computer Information Systems and Quantitative Methods Department. I'm also a principal at a consulting firm called Diamond Head Associates. I've been doing simulation for a long time, and in this particular type of simulation, there's all kinds of different types of simulation. Since I come out of a supply chain background, this type of simulation fits something where you deal with processes and randomness. So instead of looking at big data and doing the statistical analysis, which is very valuable, that tends to become an input into these models. These models deal with a process and then random events that can occur during that process, and how can you change the process to make it better. So just to give you a non-financial example, at Compaq, when I was there before I went into academics, I reported to the senior vice president, the vice president of global logistics, and we built our own simulator, supply chain simulator, and we looked at different segments of our supply chain to improve it. We had one particular segment of our business that wasn't performing well. On-time delivery to the customer was wretched, to be honest. And so we took that simulation, we replicated what was going on in the business, so we had an as-is model, and then we changed something that seemed kind of small and did a different change in the process to see the benefit. So all we did was move one supplier from being 7 days delivery, air freight from Singapore, to being in Mexico and only 3 days delivery. That one change, with all the randomness involved, random customer demand, random delivery, random ability to just perform in the manufacturing sector, all this randomness built in, we increased our on-time delivery by over 20 points. Okay, that's big. It's big. So this type of simulation is around processes and then randomness built in together. So the processes we have in the simulation have to do with really three things. Participants, the processes they go through, and we start the simulation with the participants leaving a job. So what do they do, right, when they leave a job? We also are modeling the processes for the information that is being passed around between record keepers, third-party SHIRA participants, and also the movement of the money. Okay, so we have three sort of big, broad sets of processes that we're modeling in this. Our as-is the current situation in this particular market. Accounts under $5,000 when they leave their job. And then our 2B scenario is implementing auto portability over about a 10-year time horizon, and then seeing how it works for an additional 20 years. So we go back 10 years to kind of do the as-is. You'll see a transition. I'm stealing this thunder. You'll see a transition for 10 years and then sort of steady state for 20 after that. So you'll see participants leaving their job. They can cash out, move their accounts to a new 401k or an IRA, leave it in a safe harbor IRA, move to an employer that doesn't have a 401k. So we actually, part of the model takes care of that. Also retirees. Some people leave their job and are retired. So what happens to their money if it's less than $5,000? The participants are involved in decision making, and we use the input data from data analytics to say what decisions are they making, how auto portability deals with those decisions, and then of course I did random delay. So the model is that market, accounts under $5,000, people leaving their jobs, that's when it kicks in. We have 26 different record keepers individually in the model, so we're tracking all of them as part of that model, how they interact with the participants, and how auto portability works with that. And we get statistics out at all kinds of levels. So at the market level, we have statistics out, each record keeper, how it's affecting each of them in the system, and then the safe harbor IRA repositories. So all of those together paint a very comprehensive picture of what will change if certain things occur. Now, the great thing about simulation, the way we built it, is we have one alternative scenario. There's literally almost an infinite number of alternative scenarios that could be run against the same model by changing the data input. So we've built it in such a way to be more robust, to be able to handle certain questions from certain people in the industry, where we can run different alternatives.
Great. Thanks, Ricky. Thanks. All right, let's get into it. Real quick point about the data. This was probably the largest challenge. I want to do a large shout out to EBRI and in particular to Jack. I mean, you all know how good Jack is with this stuff. But we used what I refer to as the CRI, the Center for Retirement Income databases, and we actually extracted custom information that was sort of longitudinal and straight from those databases. This information was not available elsewhere. We had made assumptions about it in prior iterations of this, but a big shout out, and I would encourage all of you to be EBRI members, and I would also encourage those of you who are EBRI members to dive deep for the specific information that you need to solve a particular business problem, because it's there if you go digging. All right? As you can see, we have other sources of data. Our standard was very simple, best available data. That standard still exists. If anybody in this room has better available data than we have underlying the simulation, we will incorporate it. As you can see, we used a combination of our own research, some stuff that Warren Cormier and Boston Research Technologies has done, GAO, and then industry reports to assemble the simulation. So I'm going to do two things now. We're going to take a quick tour through simulation results. We're going to be looking at these on an annual basis So the X and Y axis will stay the same. I didn't change the screen. Okay, I think I have to close that one or minimize that one. Thank goodness for touchscreens. Let's see if that does it. Huh. All right, we're going to take 1 sec here and close this guy down. I think I know what's going on. All right. There we go. So we're actually in the simulation itself right now. I just want to orient you so that we don't have to spend a lot of time describing everything on 4 or 5 charts that I'm going to show you. Okay? So along the x-axis, you'll see the dates 2006 through 2045. As Ricky said, we actually went back 10 years in time and modeled what happened from 2006 to 2016. That's an arbitrary start date for auto portability. Okay? On the y-axis, you're going to see various metrics, but we're going to stick with dollars, when we get there. So what you're looking at right now is what is the number of, or the dollar value of annual job changers who have less than $5,000. You with me? So if you look over to the y-axis, you're going to see out in mid-range here. I don't know if my pointer shows up when I do this. Oh, excellent. Good. You'll see here in 2016, that would be about $8.8 billion a year. These are people with less than $5,000. There are 2 primary drivers here, both of which we extracted from the work that we did with Jack and EBRI. The first one is that about 40% of all of the job changers, so 40% of the 12.5 million people, or about 5 million people a year, change jobs, and they have less than $5,000 in their account. Okay? Got it so far? And the other driver, which almost shocked us, is that the turnover rate is 28% annually. Straight from the EBRI database. What that means is every 3.3 years or so, that individual is changing jobs. Okay? I'm going to scroll and take this guy off, and now we're going to talk about 2 metrics that we will follow continuously, both through a couple of charts, and then we've got a little surprise for you. So let's look at annual cash outs. Now, I'm going to orient us again. I guess I didn't get that guy off. Something didn't go off there. This is the danger of doing something live, right? Right. Now we're just going to, so a little more orientation. Up here you see these buttons, 1 and 2. That stands for scenario 1. Scenario 1 is if nothing changes from the start of this simulation out to 2045, what will the annual cash out rate be? Okay? So you can see that number approaching in 2045 about $10 billion. There's market growth assumptions in here that we got from EBRI and things like that, right? Scenario 1 is nothing changes. Okay? I'm going to give you another metric, which is of these 5 million people a year who are changing jobs, how much of that money makes it to a new employer plan? All right? I'm going to trying to figure out why that sucker is still on there. So we're on scenario 1. Got it. So if you look down at that bottom line, the little green line, the depressing line, as someone said it to us, gee, that's depressing. That's the value right here of people who are making it from their former employer to their new employer plan. All right, so you got it set up now, right? We've got X billion, $8 billion a year cashing out. Again, these are just people less than $5,000, and we've got roughly $26 million a year going into a new employer plan. We're now going to go to and add scenario 2 on this. There is something strange here, Ricky. What's going on? Why is everything double? I'm going to use the. I'm going to step away from the mic for just a second. So follow the top line. which was our cash out line. I better stay close to this mic, right? Stay to the cash out line. And now follow me into the declining sort of light green line going from left to right. That line represents what happens to cash outs if we implement auto portability. What we've built into the simulation is about a 10-year transition period, right? Nothing happens fast in the retirement market. That transition period is arbitrary, but is reflective of things like target date funds and automatic enrollment and things like that. They take time to bake their way into the system. After they bake their way into the system, we see a fairly steadying out of cash outs. You with me so far? Everybody following? So we think, by the way, everybody has a little bit of a little FAQ that we've distributed. It's on your chair. What is auto portability? Auto portability is a very simple concept if you didn't read that. It is to create a default whereby an individual who terminates from their employer plan via a mechanism of electronic records matching, we find their new employer plan for them and move the money in. You're all familiar with electronic records matching, right? That is kind of the heart and soul of what auto portability is, right? Everybody has some form of electronic records matching in their wallet right now. Credit cards are a form of electronic records matching, right? They match you, your bank account, the vendor, all those types of things. This is a particular application of electronic records matching. Electronic records matching can be done either on a push methodology or a pull methodology. Auto portability is a push methodology. And it's a push methodology with a reason, okay? The reason is that we know from behavioral studies, many of which were referred to earlier today, that this population of job changers, particularly with very small balances, is inert. They really don't respond. And when they do respond, they cash out. Auto portability is about changing a behavior similar to auto enrollment, whereby we do it for them. Okay? It's an opt-out mechanism so that somebody can opt out if they need the money. We know people need money. Okay? If it comes to a choice between saving my money at the time of job change, in my retirement, or feeding my family, I hope we will always have a system in the United States that allows you to feed your family. Okay? We know that about 37% of people, we've done the research, take the money because it's an emergency. Now let's think about the other 63%. They're taking it. Why? Because it's the easiest path available. It is way simpler to cash out, click a button, and say, send me my money. Yeah. Pay taxes. Pay penalties. Yeah. It's still simpler than what an individual has to face in a DIY world. So we got to take the do-it-yourself element out and put a mechanism in where we do it for them. Okay? The other key element of auto portability is negative consent. Okay? And how we appropriately use negative consent to create default paths for folks, just like auto enrollment. So we can have an expectation of serious behavioral change if we create this default path. Oop. You with me so far? Because now we're going to have a little bit of fun. We're bumping up against the timeline. But we decided that looking at charts wasn't really getting it done in terms of communicating to folks what the long-term effect of auto portability is. So we took the simulation that Ricky built and we put some animation to it. All right, so I'm going to orient you just a second. Hopefully this is familiar. At the top part of our animation, we have scenario 1, which is nothing changes. The bottom half, where it says scenario 2, we implement auto portability, same data we just went through on the prior chart. We have in the upper left-hand corner of each schematic, we have an employer plan. I said earlier about 28% on average, of the people in any employer plan have less than $5,000. By the way, that's also the turnover rate. So if you heard 28% twice, it's there twice. So the little blue figures in employer plan number 1 are the 28% of the population that have less than $5,000. We're going to set this in motion in a minute. Okay? It's going to run for about 4 minutes. We've started it we already ran from 2006 to 2016. So you can see both scenarios are the same. Nothing changed. We're doing our back testing. We've done all of that. And you can see the ratio. We're going to follow 2 metrics, cash outs and roll-ins. Because if we're going to stop cash outs, we've got to know where the money's going. And auto portability is specifically designed to take that money from a former employer plan to a new employer plan. So that's the object on the far right. That's the new employer plan. You're going to see some color coding. Okay, I'll just clue you. I'll provide a little narrative while we're going through this so you can observe some changes. The color coding will be red are cashing out. Sort of a brownish color are heading into an IRA. This is people who do this today by themselves. The yellow color will be the people who get distributed out of a plan and into what's called the Safe Harbor IRA. You're probably familiar with those, all right? And the green figures will be the ones who make it across the screen to their new employer plan. So you with me so far? One more symbology. Down in the bottom diagram, scenario 2, you'll see a little gray house, okay? That gray house is a utility. It's a clearinghouse. It is the recipient and the distributor of the data needed to perform electronic records matching between employer-sponsored plans. Of course, their proxies are record keepers, right? So big-level record keepers. So any questions before we get started here? And again, I'll provide some commentary as to things to look for as we go along. As I said, about 4 minutes worth. All right. So the first thing I'd like you to note is red figures. You're going to see them on 2 places on the screen. You're going to see them leaving the plan, and the little red figures drop immediately into a cash out bucket. You also see little red figures traveling along the bottom of the screen, coming out of safe harbor IRAs. We refer to these as fast leakage and slow leakage. Okay? Fast leakage is what's reported in the industry today. If you read industry reports, and it approaches about 60% in today's world. So a little less than 6 out of every 10 people in scenario 1 cash out. All right? Slow leakage is what happens after people get into their safe harbor IRA and they subsequently cash out. And they're cashing out at rates that decline in year 1 from about 12% per year to about 6% per year. For those of you who are mathematicians, you will recognize the, sort of asymptotic curve there. And we estimate that about 89% of all of these mandatory distributions cash out over a lifetime. Do we know who they are? Sure. Other people have reported this. This is in our data. Younger ages, lower incomes. Fidelity research reports that. Okay? So we say to ourselves, okay, we have a $1,679 account balance. That's the mean account balance that's being cashed out. But it's being cashed out at age 27, 28, 29, 30. What's the value of that? Right? Well, we're going to show you the value of that. It's going to show up on the bottom scoreboard in just a second here. Okay? So fast leakage and slow leakage. We're probably at a point, I can't quite see the clock from here. Oh, good. Auto portability is fully implemented. Our little gray house is now green. And you can see a changing rate of cash outs. Now, the importance of the full green is this is modeling a widespread adoption, approaching 100% of the market. The importance of that is that you need that type of widespread adoption in order to create the most number of matches for these little accounts that are leaving a former employer plan. By the way, most of them are going to a new employer with a 401k. We've got about 8% of this population. Believe it or not, 8% of these people are retirees. We take them out of the system. We don't let them get matched up here. Okay? About 16% of this population goes off into what I call elliptical orbit. They disappear for a little while because they go to an employer that does not have a 401k plan. And then later, they return into the system, mirroring the actual job changing that's going on in the marketplace today. So the significance of the little green guys who are now on the bottom chart rapidly moving into their new employer plan is that we're able to match something approaching 80% of the population using a very simple mechanism. It's not a new technology. It does have a specific application to the retirement market. And I'm going to kind of check my clock here. Good. What else is going on? Well, there's some very small behavioral changes, and this is where we sourced Warren Cormier, who is one of our industry's leading behavioral experts. And we said, using proxies primarily from auto enrollment, okay, what behavioral changes did we see over time with the adoption of auto enrollment that we could apply to auto portability that would further reduce the cash out? And the short answer is, and you're all familiar with this from a participant behavior perspective, which is when it goes into your head that it's going to be done for me, you stop worrying about it. So over time, there's an ever gradual decrease in cash out rates from our initial burst. The initial burst is we created a mechanism that will do this for you, and after that, people get used to using the mechanism. It looks to me like our simulation has stopped for a second, so we're gonna take a moment to look at the scoreboard. All right. So if you're looking at the scoreboard, we're going to start at the top. Okay. 40 years. 40 years is a retirement generation. That's what we're reporting here. Okay. 10 behind, 30 forward, 10-year adoption period. We'll just look at cash outs first in terms of assets. On the current trajectory, in this segment, we'll see about $320 billion of cash outs over the next generation. You can start this clock anywhere you want. That number will be the same. If we're able to implement auto portability, transition it into the system, we can reduce that number, essentially cutting it in half. Now let's follow where the assets are going, right? So clearly up in the top box, $15 billion of roll-ins. These are cumulative numbers over the full horizon here. About $15 billion turns into about $130 billion. And I know there's always a few actuaries or annuity experts in the room. Would anyone care to tell me what the annuitized value of that is? Okay. Again, Mr. Fleur knew the answer to the question. I won't call on you, Howard, but thank you. So you can see a dramatic change. By the way, these cash outs in this very small segment represent about 10% of the total leakage problem across the industry. Now, we're here to work on a solution that requires a couple of things to happen. I'm happy to report that they are happening. They're in motion right now. Okay, both of them. The first one is that in order to do this, you got to get all the record keepers on board. No mean feat. A lot of cooperation going on between record keepers right now, right? Isn't that their DNA? A lot of cooperation? Not so much. All right? But I'm happy to report that when they look at the leakage problem, and they understand the public policy benefits, and they understand the benefits to their business, they're engaged. The other major effort, this is the part of the clear path forward, is a little assistance from the Department of Labor. We've asked them to confirm our own understanding. Yeah, I heard that. We've asked them to confirm our legal analysis, which applies negative consent to this particular situation, via an advisory opinion request. and they're moving on that. Okay? So we'll stop for a second. Ran a couple of minutes over. Sorry about the brief technology hiccup at the beginning. But I hope what we've done for you today is presented you with a visual picture of a problem that is kind of abstracted today. That problem is leakage among small accounts. It's my kids, by the way, my adult children, right? And your kids. And they're shooting themselves in the proverbial retirement foot now when it's most important. We can stop the leakage by taking a cooperative action, okay, and creating a default path with a little assist from the Department of Labor. And as importantly, we can incubate savings over time. There's a saver's mentality that develops. We see it in the research. People get to a certain account level. We think it's about $20,000. Could be as low as 15, right? And all of a sudden, the mindset over the importance of that saving changes. They stop cashing out. They start paying attention. And so the notion here is that by creating this default path, we incubate those savings accounts. Last but not least, this is not just a concept. I'm happy to tell you that this is actually in practice in our client base today. The electronic records matching and the technology work. We're working with a very large employer and their record keeper to make this automatic, okay? And we'll be publishing those results probably summertime or thereabouts. The headline for you all to remember is, in that specific instance, the average account balance in the employer plan increases by about 45%. And this is not 3 people. There's about 1,500 people where we have matched accounts with a safe harbor IRA and an employer-sponsored plan, and we are moving these into their employer-sponsored plan, and their account value will almost double, proving the utility of electronic records matching and the automation of the process to reduce leakage and incubate savings. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around. Appreciate it. Questions? I know we ran over a little bit, but happy to take questions if there are any. Or you can catch me out at lunch. Thanks, Harry.
Thank you, Spencer. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for over here. To all the speakers for their presentations, and thank you for all of you for attending. Really appreciate it. In the coming days and weeks, we'll be making replay information available, and we'll be doing some follow-up things with respect to some of the presentations and some of the issues presented by the presentations. So thank you very much. Enjoy lunch. Have a great day.